The UX 360 Research Summit Europe 2026 is back for its sixth edition in Berlin on the 23rd and 24th of June. UX 360 Europe is one of Europe's leading events dedicated to advancing UX research as a strategic and business driving function. The summit brings together global speakers, practical case study, and actionable frameworks focused on the full research journey, from planning and execution to stakeholder alignment and business impact. Attendees can expect sessions on cutting-edge strategy, real-world return on investment, and the evolving role of research in today's organization. I will be there as well, and if you work in UX research, design, or product, this is truly one of the unmissable UXR events in Europe. And as a listener of the UX Research Club podcast, you get 15% off on your ticket with the code UXRC15, UXRC15. All the information will be in the note of this podcast. Hello everybody and welcome. This is Emmanuel and you are listening to the UX Research Club, the podcast that is dedicated to the rising field of user research. With this show for, it is for everyone actually, everyone interested in UX, product development, digital transformation, etc. Whether you are working in a large organization or a startup, this podcast is for you. I'm so excited that today's episode, we are having a guest and a very experienced researcher that have been working in the field of UX research for more than 12 years. But before introducing our guest, I would like to thank everyone again for listening to the UX Research Club all around the world. And today, I would like to say a special thank you for people in Ukraine. So thank you so much for listening. Like every week, a little clin d'œil, a wink to Sophie Lapinois, Francis Brown, and Minwo Soe Plu. Thank you for your messages. So, if you want to support the UX Research Club, please give us some stars, write a review, or recommend the podcast to your network. That would be super nice. Next week, it will be the last episode of the first season, and I will do an episode on frequently asked questions. So if you have any question you want me to answer, you can send them to me on info@uxresearchclub.com, or you can send me a message on LinkedIn. And I also created the Google form that you can see in the description of this podcast. So you can just complete the form with your questions. So, as mentioned earlier, we're having a guest today. How exciting! The first guest of the UX Research Club. I would like to introduce Dr. Nick Fine. Dr. Nick Fine is a user researcher. He also calls himself a designer, a UX designer, genuine leader, and a public speaker. He has been in the practice for over 12 years, 8 of those which were as a freelancer. He has led UX work for a number of big brands such as Coca-Cola, SAB Miller, Jaguar Land Rover, Bentley, Ernst Young, as well as the cabinet office, the home office. He specialises in behavioural design and is the founder of the UX psychology, an approach that leverages psychology knowledge, methods, and principles in the commercial UX world. Currently, Nick is a freelance lead user researcher at the cabinet office, and in his spare time, Nick is writing a UX handbook. Actually, we can't wait to have a look at it. And he's also a keen drummer and a scuba diver. Hi, Nick. I'm so happy to have you today in a UX Research Club. So welcome. To start with, could you just talk a bit about yourself? Because I did a little official introduction just before, but I want to have your own words of who are you? Because we can see you all over the LinkedIn and social media. You are the voice of the user researcher, especially in the UK. And I think also in other countries, I think people say, who is this guy? Dr. Nick Fine.
Who is this noisy guy that keeps appearing in my newsfeed? Yes. God, I hate this question because I change. I'm like a chameleon. But ultimately, at the heart of me, I'm a psychologist. I'm a user-centric researcher and designer. That's who I am. I come from the old world of UX, which is a world of research into design or research and design. And that's who I am. And I want to make sure that very successful world, we don't lose it. And the trajectory that we've been on has meant that I've had to kind of become a personality is the wrong word. I've had to become very outspoken in ways that I haven't wanted to be. I've had to become this challenging person that's very outspoken because I've had to effectively polarize the world, polarize the audience to say, look, unfortunately, what you are doing is wrong. And that's not an easy message to tell everybody. Nobody wants to hear that they're wrong, but somebody had to do it and I couldn't sit by it anymore. So that's who I am today, is some kind of provocateur, some kind of agitator for good. I'm like a white hat. I'm a psychologist. I'm a researcher, PhD qualified, all that stuff. But my day job is as a user researcher. And that's what I do. Yeah, that's kind of me in a big nutshell, I suppose.
Oh, thank you for sharing all those information. So I'm always very curious to know how people came across user research. And I think our audience as well, we really like to know, how did you come across user research the first time? The first time.
That's a great question. The very first time I came across user research was in my undergraduate degree, in my psychology undergraduate degree, in sometime around the mid-90s, 1995, 96. We'd been asked as students, as undergrads, I can't remember what the ask was, but I had basically was using the observation lounge, which is what you know today as a UX lab. I was asking people to do tasks in Microsoft Excel on this big clunky monitor, in old technology, with a traditional monitor with a camera overhead, one at 45, the traditional observation lounge stuff. And I've still got the video somewhere. I've got an old VHS video with this video on it. It's like my first ever user testing. And that was my first ever exposure to it. But it was only when I got into an agency and got into my first kind of lab experience and watched a user researcher, a UX consultant doing this, I was like, wait a minute, I've done this before. This is familiar. And that's when I basically put the two and two together. And it was that moment where actually UX psychology was born, was like, wait a minute, psychologists know some of this stuff already. We were taught it as undergrads. Why isn't that in industry? Why is there no appreciation of that? So I've spent a lot of time trying to promote and advocate psychology undergrads, because a lot of people have their first experience of user research or user testing at university.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you, because as a psychologist myself, I can really see the strong links between user research and psychology. It's just like such a logic.
It's so
background.
Obvious. Yeah.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that everybody else doesn't see it. Psychology is the study of human behavior, and UX is about human behavior. I mean, can't we connect the two? I guess not yet. The world will get there.
Yeah, eventually. We need to keep working very hard in that direction, to be sure. And another question, which I think people would really like to have some insight from you, is how did you transition to UX research? Because a lot of people, I can see so many groups on LinkedIn, on Facebook, for transitioning to UX research. So how did you do it? What was your own experience? Because I think, everyone is different. I can share my experience, but I think it's very nice to see all the different people who actually transition to user experience research.
I'm going to tell you guys what you want to hear and what you need to hear, what the facts of what happened, because when I left academia after defending my PhD in 2009, I was like, here I go, super researcher. And guess what? My first experiences in the lab and all that stuff were way I was way off base. I was not trained. I was inexperienced. I was a PhD, MSc, BSc who hadn't done any real user research in the real world. So as a UX consultant or UX architect, as I was at the time, I had to adapt and learn everything that I know today. So that should give you guys tremendous inspiration that I learned everything effectively on the job. Now, I learned a lot faster because I've got academic stuff to build and adapt. So I've got frameworks and I've got stuff that I've spent a decade adapting. But if you were to join it today, There's nothing preventing you, and there's a lot more knowledge in that world. So, that effectively, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. So what do you think about the research methods and the skill set for the research methods?
Well, research methods is a very developing area. I mean, it's an extraordinarily developing area because it comes down to the needs of the project. Research methods in today's world, I can't use the research methods that I use in academia in the commercial world. They're just not appropriate in the projects that I've ever worked on. The principles are yes, but the actual methods, no. But it's a very developing and emerging world. I mean, we will be moving academic methods into the commercial world where necessary. But basically, I think the world overplays a lot of methodologies. If I look back in the past 12 or 13 years of UX practice, how many methodologies that they teach you in boot camps and all these other places have I actually needed to use? And I'd say there's probably a handful, like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
It isn't 20. It isn't whatever the graphics show you. Ethnography, for example. Well, yeah, sure. I've stood around and watched people do stuff all the time. Do I call that a contextual inquiry? Do I call that ethnography? Whatever. I was finding stuff out. I mean, I don't necessarily contextualize or compartmentalize the way that everybody else does. You just find stuff out. It's not a formal ethnographic study, right? I was on the floor. I was interviewing people, but at the same time, I stood around for a half an hour listening and observing and looking at footfall and exceptions and doorway usage and all of this stuff that, you know what I mean, you don't get from people's mouths. You're an investigator, researcher is another word for it, but you need to follow leads, Dr. Ari Zelmanoff is brilliant at talking about this. He's an ex-policeman. And talks about the investigative attitude, which, it's a scientific methodology. It's a scientific mindset. So I apply that and the principles a lot more than I do this wide range of methods that I think lots of people talk about.
Okay, thank you. That's super interesting. Actually made me think, It's great. Do you remember your first research project?
Oh, yeah. You always remember your first love, or you know what I mean? broke your heart.
So how was it?
I honestly, I remember them all. I remember every single one of them, because when you're speaking to people, you form mental models, you form empathic models, you form relationships and images. You can't spend that much time getting deep into minds or geography or what brand or whatever it is you're getting into and just forget about it. So I do remember my first one. I don't think I should name the actual company. I was at an agency. It was a holiday company, a holiday homes company in the UK. And I spent time with another UX consultant on a number of different of these holiday sites, looking at signage and footfall. I spent a night in a few of these things, which was interesting. As well as speaking to people across the board and doing the rounds. I was effectively a UX consultant, so I was going to be redesigning their website and this holiday company. So I did a bit of discovery research, as we would call it today. But really, the thing to do is to get into a prototype and then iterate it like mad from there, whilst researching all the time. I should mention that IA, that information architecture, was so bad that I designed. It was like 12 or 15 links long across the top. It's the nightmare, like I've never designed before. What the hell am I doing? Wireframe. It was embarrassing. My boss or the head of UX fixed it. It was one of the worst days of my life at the time. But I learned some massive, massive lessons, and you take it on the chin and you learn and you move on. And now I'm not scared of IA anymore.
Well, you talk about the research method a bit earlier, but what is your favorite approach? Like Dr. Nick Finn, favorite tool set?
Tool set, I'm 100% behavioural. All day, every day. It's an easy question to answer for that, because I don't like doing interviews. I don't like talking to people. I don't like self-reporting. I fundamentally don't like it. I mean, obviously we have to do it. I have to do it as human beings, is getting stuff out from here, because I can't scan you, or I have to, there's two ways of getting stuff out of people. either they can tell you it or you can watch them doing it. And I'm a watch them doing it kind of guy. I'm a behaviorist. I believe fundamentally that behavior is honest, and that what people say is dishonest, or not intentionally dishonest, skewed, biased.
I totally agree with you, because once I was doing some eye tracking, I had a little portable eye tracking tool. I was experimenting for a company which I can't name. And I was asking some of the participants about the content, and could you find this? And you see the eyes, they couldn't find. I say, yeah, I can see it. And you see then the eyes, and they couldn't find the information. So that was really the behavior, when they speak aloud, when they say something, they always lie to look good, and then when you look at them, how they interact with the product, how actually it's very different, so the reality of the world is so different than what people are saying. So absolutely on it with you. I think it's
and that's the stuff they taught me at university. They taught me it's called acquiescence. The phenomenon of wanting to be a good test subject. The minute you're a participant, you want to perform well. And so we've all seen it in a user research session where you've had a sweep up question at the very end that says, how did you find that experience? And you've just asked them to buy the red shoes, and they've struggled, or they haven't been able to do it. And time's gone on, and end of session, how did you find that? It was great. I loved it. It was amazing. Well, what they're doing is they're saying that to please you. They're acquiescing to what they think your needs as an experimenter are. But actually, behaviorally, they couldn't find the red shoes in a reasonable time.
Yeah.
What people say and what they do aren't the same thing, and they're usually poles apart.
Yeah. And so now, what do you think is the most challenging aspect of user experience research?
Almost certainly analysis for me, but that's easy for me to say as like an old white man, right? If you're a younger female, there are places and situations to go into which are really uncomfortable in terms of field work and research settings. And there are protections needed to be in place. I mean, there should be for everybody, but obviously there are more vulnerable or more susceptible, targetable people. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of remote research done today. So post-pandemic has changed in terms of the threat or the risk levels. But being a user researcher out in the world it's hairy. It can get spicy. There are times when I've had participants, give me both barrels. They've shouted at me, not because I've been inappropriate or because I've done something unethical or amoral, because it's a very emotional subject and they feel really strongly about it and they're just letting it all out. And that's great. You want that, but it's hard. We're human beings. We're empathic beings generally. It's hard to take that on board. And if you're doing a full day of that, it's heavy going, especially if you're working with good people like nurses or teachers, and you're trying to understand their struggles. It's hard. And analysis sucks. It really can suck. If you've done, like, say, a 45-minute-hour interview, and then you want to write up that 1 hour, you're pressing pause you're pressing the pause bar every few seconds. That 1 hour becomes 5. Now do that 5 times or 10 times for your sample, and you're talking about a whole week's worth of analysis of just watching video. And it never gets easy. It does get easier, but it gets easier. And I dread it, to be fair. That's why I try to keep my research sessions as short as possible. And I don't mean that inappropriately or dangerously or irresponsibly, if you know what I mean. I'm only going to do a depth interview if I'm getting absolute nuggets per second. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, it's not worth my or anybody else's analysis time for me to pay me to watch that stuff back. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
If I'm going in, I'd rather do a 15, 20 minute, get the goods and get out again, and then go back and see them a second time, a third time, if I need to validate or cross-reference, whatever.
Yeah. So you are mentioning the importance of watching your video and analyzing through the video of your session. So, because I've seen so many people, they just post it on the wall and then say the analysis is done. So why do you think it's so important to go back to your video?
Oh gosh, video for me, especially post-pandemic, because the post-pandemic has facilitated video in lots more ways that it was much harder to do in the physical world. I've just made a show reel for my current gig. I just showed it to the product manager for the first time. And he's really wowed by it. And he's like, oh my God, I love that. It's 2.5, 3 minutes long. And it's like, yes, that's the effect that they have. Show reels move needles. I'm nothing without my deliverables, and my deliverables are light, engaging, and low effort. That's the important part. And a show reel that's no more than 3 minutes long, that is changing quickly, that you're getting different perspectives on the issue that we're talking about. You're illustrating needs, and it's transformational, it's engaging, it's evidence, all this stuff. No one reads insight reports. Forget big PowerPoints. If you're doing a PowerPoint or a keynote, you use a need. Next slide. Next, use a need. Don't fill up slides with text. If you're doing assessments, if you're UK researchers and you're gov folk, definitely don't put lots of text on page. That's the best way to screw up an assessment, in my humble opinion.
So I totally agree for presentation like this for government, because they are quite mature. Actually, they are super mature in terms of user research. But when you move to some organization, we don't have this maturity, and they expect to have something much bigger. That's a challenge because we experience. So slowly you educate people to understand what you do, trust it, and then reduce the content as you go along. Yeah.
What you need to, I would recommend you try to do, is to train people to not expect quantity, because that's like an old school agency way of thinking. It's about quality, right? It's about the quality of insight rather than the quantity of deliverables, if you know what I mean. If you can raise one golden nugget that moves the needle, you can say that on one slide. Yeah. I learned that customers like it blue. Fantastic. We sell 30% more stuff, right? That's seriously. What was everything else needed for? That's the nugget. We are miners for gold. You know what I mean? Get the gold.
So you talk about the analysis and the time it takes. We all go through it, and we just at some point, we have to take shortcut because we just had enough. I know the feeling. Been analyzing data for many years and going back and back to the video, and our brain is playing us so much, so we have to rewatch it. Did we see something there? Go back to it. But another part of the job, because when we had a chat last week or 2 weeks ago, you mentioned the participant recruitment. So tell me about it.
It's a good question, because participant recruitment is just like an ongoing career lifetime struggle or concern, I would say. A lot of the things that we were taught by our elders don't necessarily hold true, or at least I would say that. I'm going to say some dangerous things now, okay? So
that's okay.
Big caveat. If you're new to UX, this is controversial stuff, what I'm about to say, and may or may not work for you. Treat with caution. Sorry, what was your question? Give me the question again.
It was about the participant. And you say you are going to...
So participants. Common knowledge, like best practice, dictates you should just generate a fresh sample that's representative every single time and frequently. And that's good practice, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. But practically, getting hold of users is sometimes like getting blood out of a stone, for legal reasons or for whatever reasons that is. So you have to work with what you have at hand. And that's much more my actual experience. I've never had limitless users to do stuff with, but I've still had the demands of my time and the expectation to deliver stuff. So a more pragmatic way of doing this is to cultivate a network of people that you can go back to. Now, there's inherent dangers with this stuff, because you're kind of creating a panel. And panels are really bad, in my humble opinion, because there's power struggles and hippos and stuff that goes on in a panel that makes it a really bad sample. But sometimes that's all you've got to work with. So you have to make the best of a bad thing. So recruitment can be, yes, I pay lots of money to a recruitment agency who just give me people. That can work. I've had absolute nightmares with that when, I'll tell you about that another time. There are games that those guys play. So you don't necessarily get really valid people who are interested in or from the segment that they say they are. That's another game altogether. So that's one way. Let's call that perfection. Then there's my way, which is the pragmatic, use what you got. You can use some internals, some suppliers, I don't know, whatever you've got access to, or a limited number of users. The thing to do here is to treat the insight that comes from these slightly dodgy samples as hypothetical. You're not going, yes, we need to build it blue on the basis of 5 people and their mum, because that's a really risky sample. But if it looks like they're all saying blue, keep repeating samples wherever you can, as diversely as you can. And you should start to get some kind of plateau. So that's how you kind of get over that pain point of kind of recruitment struggles. And basically, the question that you'll probably ask me next is how many is enough? I know you know the answer as a scientist, but for the audience, it's until you're confident. And that confidence comes from repeating insight. When you're not learning anymore and you're wasting valuable participants, you're pretty much there.
Yeah. When you start hearing the same thing, it's time to stop. And if you see, I didn't do an episode on participant recruitment and the number of participants. When you start hearing the same thing, this is it. You don't waste those participants. Keep them for something where you really need them.
Yeah. But don't flip too soon. I've made that mistake where you think you're getting a plateau when you're not. That's just a plateau for those 3 or 4 people. If you go, oh yeah, we're done here, and then there's a ton more just because that sample was slightly weird. Yeah, you could stop prematurely and still build the wrong thing. So just be careful.
I will say between 8 and 9, you start seeing something is really stable. And sometimes you have to do more because you don't have enough. You don't reach the plateau. So I do think sometimes when we start analyzing, you see the systematic, answers. They say the same thing. You can see the diversity of your sample. So I find 8, 9, I start feeling comfortable. And sometimes you say 9, okay, we can stop 10 max, that's okay. And sometimes you're at 8, 9. And actually, you don't see any consistency. So you say, well, I need more. So you need to reach 16 or 18. You never know. But that's, you need to play by ears and see how things are happening. Yeah. Absolutely.
For evaluative stuff, 100%. I mean, sometimes you can get after 2 or 3, right? Oh, yeah, that's broken. Right?
They can't find it.
Oh, yeah. Or that's really dumb copy. You're going to find that pretty quickly and we're good. But for generative... for discovery stuff, sometimes it's a whole different game.
Yeah.
And it's not really my specialty, if I'm honest. You need to go over much larger numbers and geographical sampling and all. It depends what the questions you're asking, but it gets a lot. It's a much easier, and what UX knows a lot more about is the evaluative world.
Yeah.
And less about the discovery world, if I'm honest, or at least that's my perspective. Maybe other people will disagree, but. Yeah,
I do agree with you. I found that actually a lot of people think like user testing, usability testing, but they tend to forget the discovery we have to do, understanding who are the users, the wide panel. And you see that with the government, the audience is massive, when they start doing work, which is for all the population, the audience is huge. You need to take everyone into consideration, from the super computer savvy to the person with needs full assistance to use the product, and all the different people, the spectrum is wide and enormous. So yeah, discovery can be much more. We sometimes go 30, 40, just because you just still see new categories and you need enough participants. But yeah, I will do the next season or the one after because, I've got so much I have to cover at some point, but about discovery, because I think the discovery is super important and can save a lot of time in the long run, actually. So as you've been in the industry for quite a long time, you've been there a while. I think I know you from the beginning because I think we almost started at the same time. So we crossed a path quite a long time ago. And how do you see, the evolution of the UX research? Because we see things, quite a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. I see it going sort of like we led off with. I see psychology becoming much more relevant and appreciated or recognized as a really important part of digital, not just within UX. That psychologists has got a lot to offer to product development in general and all those practices that contribute to it. I would love to see behavioral design explode in the coming years. That's what I'm all about, and that's where I was at when UX UI came along and basically killed the party. But the party's coming back again. Hopefully UX UI was just a temporary road bump. It was a necessary vehicle to get in the people needed because we had a skills shortage. We've now got so many people that I hope that user researchers can get back to becoming more. When I say a supporting actor, I don't mean subservient. I mean partners of designers. True partners. I like the design partnership should be research and design. So the UX consultant that I used to be, the research and design in one, should now be 2 people that just like cops, like a 70s cop show, or maybe, you know what I mean? You've got your partner. and you know how each other work, and you know each other's foibles and strengths and weaknesses. The best outputs that I've had is when I've been working with a partner designer who's just awesome at what they do, you know, and I'm just awesome at what I do. And the magic happens is when they turn my stuff into their stuff.
That's amazing, actually, when that works. But it's not always the case. So how do you manage that?
Well, what we have to do is keep this idea of user centricity and user centered design as our North Star, as our leading light for everybody in digital. Because it doesn't matter what discipline you come from, as long as we're all being user centric, the process and the outputs will all work. It's really that simple. The idea that UX is a design or visual thing is so crazy and so wrong that research and design is the new design.
Yeah, I do believe that it's two different disciplines. And actually, I keep saying we've got different skill set, we are complementary, and we support each other. And it's how we can manage to produce a great product, you know?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Research plus design being the new design, aka behavioral design. So you have user researchers doing the behavioral bit and the designers doing the design bit, but baking in the behavioral insight into the design solution. That's how magic happens. That's how we build beautiful, amazing, next level experiences.
So now we are going to talk about something which is not as positive. Is you heard about all those layoffs which happen in the industry, you know, and I did mention it that generally research is the first function which are out of the organization. So what could you say about that? And you know, you can really be honest, and you've got the.
That's all I ever am, unfortunately, to my detriment. I don't know how to lie. Obviously, it's awful, and I think it's a really disgusting reflection of like profitability in today's corporate world. That I know where there are recession and bad financial markets happening and stuff, you know, world events. But when you're not in trouble financially and you're laying off people to extend profits, that's just the ugliest side of capitalism at the furthest end. And these are companies have all been saying, we, you know, value people are, you know, when people are our greatest asset, and putting the customers at the heart of everything that we do. These behaviors tell me that's true behavior. That's true intent. It's money first, everybody else second. And as a user researcher and as a, you know, UX guy, I'm about fighting for the user. So when users are comrades or actual customers, it's difficult and hard to see what's going on. It's just a reminder that we live in a commercial world where money is the North Star. And it's fairly demotivating and hard to everybody to say, wait a minute, I'm going to do all this good work for you, make your products amazing, make them sell better, make you drop your costs down. And then what? You're going to fire me for the, you know, are you going to fire me for that? It's like, really? It doesn't sit well. I mean, it makes us all feel like mugs. Or the people that are doing it, like you, why are you doing that? Well, because that's how we earn money in today's world. That's a form of modern slavery or something ugly. I don't like the look of it.
So what do you think is going to happen to all those people now that, you know, there is still a lot of job as user researcher, plenty.
Don't worry about those people, right? Listen, I hope I'm not being heartless here, but if I've just been kicked out of a Silicon Valley, you know, big tech company, Meta, Facebook, Amazon, if I've got that on my CV, I walk into any research job out there. I think if you're anybody not from one of those big brands on your CV, you're in really big trouble, because there's literally tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people out there who are coming from big tech, who will walk into the first interview at any other company, which means all the people that were queued up for those jobs will never get a look in. So now's the worst time to try to get into the industry, because there's literally no room. We're overflowing with high-end talent, which represents a problem for everyone.
And it's not only, is it only for user research, or it's also for design, or it's?
I can't say. All I know is within my network and my echo chamber, you know. I mean, I only get to see my angle, you know. I think that the people look, if you're a young person, let's say you're 25 years old, paying $150,000 and you're living in San Fran, which is ridiculously expensive rents and all of that stuff, and you've just been kicked out, you've got a huge salary demand, or you've got to vacate your apartment, right? That's not fun. That's not nice. What I'm saying is the people that are coming from some of these really massive entities, I question whether the user research that's done there is typical of the rest of the commercial world, right? Are you coming out there and saying, hi, I'm ex-Meta and I'm going to come work for you, and I've got all these big standards or way of working, or a particular Facebook or Amazon way of working? How well does that adapt to the pragmatic world where businesses don't have limitless money and limitless resource? I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm doing them a terrible disservice, or maybe at the other end of the scale, you've got prima donnas coming out, or who only know a very, very thin slice of methodology. I don't know. I really don't know. The world's going to find out one way or another.
Yeah, time will tell, and we see the one who actually. I think they probably, when you change, it's a change of life, change of our environment, so they will have to adapt. So they need to find their way.
Yeah.
And yes, a question about what is for you a good foundation to become a UX researcher?
Obviously psychology, but not everybody's got a psychology undergraduate degree. So we'll just park that for a moment. Having an inner scientist is probably a good thing. What do I mean by that? I mean a need to know, right? A curiosity that it's like an appetite that you have to sate. If you're one of those kinds of people that just needs to know stuff and kind of doesn't care about the consequences in finding stuff out, if you've got that urge, then user research is probably something that you'll really love. I have that urge. It's what Emmanuel has, that urge. It's what makes us PhD folk, or just researchers, basically, because we have a need to know stuff. It's what drives me through some of that darker times, some of the harder times that we have as user researchers, that passion, that drive, that need to know, that curiosity. I'd say that's a really good bedrock for anybody. Once you've got that, everything else is kind of easy, I would imagine. I mean, it's just learning stuff and practicing stuff and doing stuff, but the engine underneath it all is curiosity.
And what would be the strength or skill set or character trait of a UX researcher? What would you look at, when you say, oh, it's got good, that's a good thing to have as a UX researcher?
Obviously, you need to be a people person. That, I think, is number one, right? We're dealing with people. So not necessarily being sociable or extroverted, because I don't think I'm either of those. I think you have to like or love people. Again, that's another thing that gets me out of bed in the morning. I like people as a thing to study. I find people interesting. If you find people interesting, if you're the sort of person that can sit in a cafe and sip a coffee and just watch people go by, again, user research might be a thing for you. It's that kind of curiosity, or just watching other people's patterns or habits or micro gestures or foibles or nonverbals or whatever that is. I'd say that's that kind of curious about people. I'm going to say empathy, but not in the way that I've been fighting against. If you're an empathic person, maybe user research is a really bad thing for you, because you're going to get really hurt along the way. But having, if you enjoy that kind of being in other people's shoes, should we say, appreciating other perspectives, then user research is definitely that will set you up for success, or it'll help motivate you through the user research journey.
Is there anything you want to share with the audience? Anything, you can.
Well, generally.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I put you on the spot there.
Market research is a problem. But they're also friends. So it's weird. It's something that we all need to work out how. In my very early days at agencies, I was given these huge bundles of stuff from marketing departments. You guys probably still do. pen portraits were a big thing back in the day. That's a bit like market research's version of a persona. They represent segments. And if you've ever worked with, what are they called? There's a couple of segmentation companies. Can't remember them now. But trying to convert a pen portrait into a persona is nigh on impossible. But there's a lot of things that market research have that are potentially interesting and useful inputs to us as user researchers. But they are at a very high macro level, and we're down here at a micro level. So you've got to work out what's useful and what's just kind of contextually kind of secondary informative, not very relevant, and what is directly informing the behaviors or the conditions or the stuff down here, right? And I can't give you any laws or guidelines on this. It as 100% depends on the stuff that you're working on. But market research can be a source of insight, or it can be an absolute wild goose chase, and you'll spend a couple of days looking through absolute garbage. That's what happens. It's usually the latter, unfortunately, but there can be nuggets in there. Or ideas. Sorry.
No, God. Sorry, God.
No, I'm done. That was it.
Okay, so one thing I find is I had a junior researcher actually transition from market research to user research. She was phenomenal. She really switched to UX, start getting understanding of the UX and apply some of the methodology, and we upskill her on other methodology. She was just a rock star. I think it could be also a very good foundation to transition to UX research, actually.
The thing that always grinds my gears, I've sat in so many quarterly presentations at big corporate for a market research company to come in and do the presentation. You've probably been in them too. We've all been in one. They're slides with lots of graphs and super density, and you don't really know what's going on. There's so much. It's $1 billion industry, right? I mean, that's not the point. What always grinds my gears, really gets to me in those presentations, is I never understand the methodology or the provenance of what you're telling me. Because I'd be totally into it and I'd be much more engaged with it if I knew where this was coming from. And that's the question that I ask of everything. Whenever I land at a gig and I get a bundle of stuff, or I'm looking through whatever's currently being done, the as is, I just want to know who did this, how did you do it, and what did you learn, kind of stuff, a basic methodology. And Emmanuel and I both know this as scientists, because we expect a certain structure. I don't expect a scientific structure. I do expect at least the headlines or something approximating it, or that content somewhere to be found in an appendix, in the bottom of it somewhere. If you give me a document that's unnamed and has got no methodology on it and is making claims, I don't care. It's gone. There's no point. I can't use that, because otherwise I'm taking it. It could be a fairy tale, or it could be gold. I don't know that. And that's incredibly dangerous stuff. So that goes in the I don't know pile, which basically is the bin. And that's the problem with a lot of market research. So when you've got market researchers who are really great and scientific minded and care about validity, reliability, methodology, they're rock stars. Make friends with them, all of that good stuff. It's just there's a lot of really dodgy stuff, which is all showboating and making money from clients with big fancy deliverables that don't mean very much. And you can never find out where it came from. That's the red flag. And it's a really big top tip, I would say, to anybody out there.
One last question, because I'm just concerned a bit of time. We've got a great audience of people who have PhD and transitioning to UX research as a fellow PhD. What would you recommend them? Because, they all want to move to UX research, but, they need a bit of guidance. And I think as a senior researcher, been there in the industry, went through the process, what will you recommend them?
I'll try to be quick, but that's a huge question because there's so many different facets to that question. There's a British PhD versus an American PhD, right? Or let's just say there's a pure research PhD versus a right? Mine's pure research. No lecturing, no seminars, no nothing. Just do the research. But there's a lot of PhDs in America are not like that. Like it's all taught, and then there's you do a final year project or something like that.
Yeah,
it's very different. Also, and I think in that case, and I must be very wrong, I don't know how wrong I am here, and US PhDs, please correct me. I think they get a lot more scientific training during that time, right?
They got research methods training in the US.
Get all that training, yes, exactly, which is effectively what I got or you got in my BSc psychology.
Exactly.
Right? So I didn't need to repeat that because I already had it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I'm such an advocate for the BSc psychology, because that's where I learned my research methods, my principles, my scientific thinking, the scientific method. But if our US counterparts got it in their PhD, great, superb, makes them ultra relevant. Ultra relevant. So the only problem that's the curveball that skews this all up is basically there are PhDs out there who are very much overplaying their PhDs in like geography or history, in UX. I'm going to go even further and say something like neuroscience, right? Now that's controversial, and you can come kick me in the kidneys and all that kind of stuff. But what neuroscience methods, or I'm going to get myself in trouble. If you're a British neuroscience person, probably you're going to have a really hard time. If you're an American neuroscience person, you've got all that scientific stuff in your PhD. Do you see what I'm saying? Whereas if you're a British neuroscience person and you haven't come up through the psychology route, then there's nothing in your training that informs what you're going to do in user research. Does that make some sense?
Yeah.
So either you got it as a psychology undergrad, or you got it as part of a PhD training program. You know, that's where the value is. So yeah, if you've got that, 100%, you can totally adapt yourself to the user research world. But if you're a PhD and you haven't got much in the way of scientific methodology or psychology, I think you're going to struggle a lot, because whatever research methods you've got aren't going to be that applicable in this world. That's the truth. Sorry to say that, you know?
Foundation in psychology is very important, in my opinion.
Like the number one research methodology for my PhD was the multivariate analysis of covariance. Good old-fashioned Mancova, right? I never want to say that word again out of my mouth. I did it so many thousands of times. I'm burned by that. SPSS, repeating it for days. For days, right? But the point is I don't do that shit in the real in the commercial world. I haven't cracked open SPS or Mathematica once. You know, that my PhD research method it's a statistical analysis. It's data science by today's language. By the way, that's another thing. For the future of UX, some data science will probably come in. Love to see that.
We can see data scientists in a different organization. Actually, it's very interesting because we can test and experiment things, implementation on some of the product. So they went to discovery, alpha, and then in beta, they can do a little bit of experiment and actually capture, that it's live, on a private beta, and they can create some models to capture the information so we can see what the user are doing as well to validate, with the interaction on the product. So that's only the organization with a lot of money we can do that, because it takes time and money to do it.
But currently it totally happens with MVT and me. So the web analyst and Nick Fine, user researcher. So we put the hypotheses into the machine and we wait for significance, and bang, we can get there. So it can be done. But I think that's how it stands today. That's almost like behavioral science 101. I think hopefully user researchers will get like a UX data scientist to work with, or maybe user researchers become data scientists. And maybe that's the next evolution of UX in the next 10, 20 years, Yeah. Something like that. That would be amazing. I'd love that. I mean, I'll be retired or dead, but hey, it'll be cool.
Maybe you won't be retired. You love your job too much, Yeah. You'll still be doing some gig from here and there, or talking to people, lecturing people, training, You won't be gone by then.
Well, I'll have my beach bar in the Bahamas. Please, God.
Invite me, I come for a mojito. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed this episode today, and if you have any question or a topic you would like me to cover, you can contact me on info@uxresearchclub.com. You can also find a lot of information about user research by reading my book, Practical User Research, which covers how to integrate user research into your product development. Detail will be in the description of this podcast. And finally, if you want to support the UX Research Club, please share it with your network on social media, or please write a review or give me some stars. I'll see you next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening, and goodbye.